Dear all, dear feminists, all the world is a stage. This comes of Shakespeare's As You Like It, and this year we do celebrate Shakespeare's 50th birthday. I'm not necessarily celebrating Shakespeare when I'm standing here. I don't mind Shakespeare, but I wanted to tell you the story how one becomes a feminist while studying at a university. When I was a young theater student, we were told that there were no important women in the history of performing arts. We were studying the Greeks, the ancient theater where all the women's parts were performed by men, and there was no explanation and no problem with this. Then we learned that in Indian, Chinese and Japanese theater, women could not perform the parts of women because a woman's body would destroy the parts. Then we learned that in ancient Rome, well, the parts were still the women's parts were performed by men, and there was no explanation. Then the early modern theater in Europe, we had a few women, but very little female presence because Christianity and the church hated both the women's and the men's bodies. The performing body and the hatred of religion against the body has always been a very big problem for an art form where you basically use your body as an instrument. Then the opera. It came along with the voices of the castratos. How strange wasn't that? But anyway, it happened, and we actually had a few female voices, but the superior voice was the voice of the castrato. Then we came to Shakespeare, and the male parts were performed by men, but the women's parts were performed by men, because, as we were told, and as the people of the time were telling their audiences, if you would show a woman on the stage, you would actually they would arouse some undesirable desires among the audience. But what they didn't get was that if you are showing two men together, there might be some homoerotic desires arousing in the audience. Then something happened. Women started to perform. But what kind of parts were they performing? All of a sudden, all the women were dying. Dying women in ancient Greek plays, Rome, not so much in Shakespeare, but also there. The women were evil and they died for all kinds of reasons. In opera, the women were dying too. Brunhilde, Norma, Carmen, all these women were dying, and the French theorist Hélène Cixous said that going to a theater is like going to one's own funeral, because all the women are dying and there is no hope. They just die off. They disappear. Well, then something happened. All of a sudden there were women and there were feminists and there were performers who actually didn't believe in the fact that there had never been women on stage, because they had been wrong all along the way. There had been women on stage performing already in ancient Greece, in Rome, also in early Christianity, also during Shakespeare times and later on. And the question is, how could I, because I still think that I'm not that stupid, but how could we stand there or sit there passively and taking on this kind of education, never really asking the question how impossible it was that the gender thing was never questioned? And then some sisters came along and said, well, how about this? That gender actually could also be a performance. And it explained it everything. Anyway, all the stuff was explained by the fact that the gender might be performed in very different ways. The feminist performance, using the body and using the autobiographical stories of women, telling the stories of women all over the world in global theatre, but also about the queer bodies, about the non-white bodies, about the colonial bodies, about the abused bodies, about all kinds of bodies, disabled bodies, and all those things that we have never been told before, have been told by activist performers. And today, when we see and we have this diversity of performance all over the world, so I just want to say you something. Thank you for everyone. Thank you for everyone who is standing up not only for human rights, but also for culture and the arts. Because in these times of neoliberal politics, there are cuts also in the cultural and in the fields of the arts. And if you could imagine, or can you imagine, a world without music, without the performing arts, visual arts, without the cinema, without anything of the kind? And this is, I think, an important thing to remember, that when we are coming together as feminists from all over the world, not only from the Nordic region, it's important to remember that there is also economy behind everything. We have a tradition within the Nordic countries. We have the welfare state policy of state funding of culture. If the political direction is going to be as it has been for the last 10 years, 20 years, almost 30 years, so we are not going to have the funding we are used to in the future. So what I'm telling you is that, well, performing arts might have a strange history. I might be weird myself, loving this art form, but I can't imagine anything as powerful as people singing and dancing, speaking and actually performing in the front of other people. Despite the digital culture and new technology, it's still the human body that is making that effort to other human bodies who are sitting in the audience. And it is just like politics, believe me. Seeing someone perform, seeing someone, listening to someone who is singing, and actually getting a message across. I can't imagine anything as powerful as that. So, dear friends, nothing comes of nothing. It's another kind of Shakespearean verse or phrase, and there are a lot of them, of course, in the literature. But whatever you think about the arts, being something unnecessary, something that is only there for entertainment, I think you should think twice. You might not think the way, but all those who are not here, and especially those who don't understand what the arts are about to make cuts also in our countries. So beware of fascist and populist and new right-wing politics, because we have seen them coming. They are here. This is Europe for you today. And please do sing out and do protest, because for that matter, you need the artists and you need everyone, not only women, but everyone who can stand up against the European fascism of today. Thank you.